Okay. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Voldemort is after this magical stone of which Nicholas Flamel had originally created to keep him and his wife alive for 6 whole centuries. Believe it or not, on September 6, 2017, Pottermore acknowledged that since some believe Nicholas Flamel and his wife never died in actuality, there are reports of him and his wife Perenelle having faked their deaths and escaped to India, and their immortality is all down to his supposed alchemical genius. Today, we shall reveal why the Philosopher's Stone is a major symbol for alchemy and how it represents the remarkable evolution of the scientific culture, paving the way to modern chemistry. Okay, so this is Lawrence Principe. Lawrence Principe, who earned his first PhD in chemistry and his second in the history of science from Johns Hopkins University, as if you couldn't get smarter than that, explains to the Science History Institute on December 11th, 2017, that alchemy is now increasingly recognized as a fundamental part of the heritage of chemistry, of continuing human attempts to explore, to control, and to make use of the natural world around us. So, let's first explore a brief, fascinating history of alchemy, next consider the role of the Philosopher's Stone, and finally, understand how it sparked scientific progress into modern chemistry. So first, let's learn about the mystical history and importance of alchemy. According to Khan Academy Access, April 27, 2018, as an influenced student of Aristotle, Alexander the Great had founded the city of Alexandria, which became the hub of all things alchemy. If you've heard of the Library of Alexandria, that burned down and a lot of information got destroyed, which is kind of sad because there were probably a lot of alchemy books in there. I wish I was there. I really wish I was there. And you'll understand why in a bit. Anywho, the Arabs soon took over the city of Alexandria in the 7th century, where Jabir ibn Hayyan in the late 700s added to the Aristotelian theory, because you know how his name is Aristotle? I would think that it's Aristotelian, but apparently it's Aristotelian. Why? I don't know. Okay, so Ibn Hayyan in the late 700s added to the Aristotelian theory that there are actually more elements than the Aristotelian theory of earth, water, fire, air. Avatar? Anyone? So Ibn Hayyan actually added to the theory that there are more elements. He thought gold is made up of sulfur and mercury, which isn't quite right, but at least there's sulfur and mercury now. So in February 2014, the Smithsonian described how the medieval alchemists were obsessed with secrecy and deliberately used mystical and poetical metaphors so in order to hide their practical techniques from nobles who thought alchemy was corrupt. So, for example, mercury was often called the doorkeeper, or the green lion, Maydew, Mother Egg, bird of Hermes. Okay. Distillation was often referred to as birds flying to heaven. And strong acid was considered to be a devouring lion. So, and potassium nitrate, which is probably the most beautiful one, is called the cold dragon, which creeps in and out of the caves and leaves a cool feeling on the tongue. So, the last alchemists were actually considered sorcerers, and so it's very interesting to me because I really love poetry. I used to be a spoken word artist. I do have my first place medals on me. And so I really love how when they're writing this poetry, you know, it kind of sounds like they're casting a spell, and in a way that they are mixing various things and they're creating things. And so the nobles hated it because obviously witchcraft is forbidden. So it's really interesting to me that they really had to hide this. Another sidetrack. This is a really awesome riddle type of thing that describes the Philosopher's Stone as described in the Gloria Mundi, which is a very ancient text from the 16th century. It says, "The Philosopher's Stone is familiar to all men, both young and old, is found in the country, in the village, in the town, in all things created by God. Yet it is despised by all, rich and poor, handle it every day. It is cast into the street by servants' maids, children play with it, yet no one prizes it. Though, next to the human soul, it is the most beautiful and precious thing upon earth, and has the power to pull down kings and princes. Nevertheless, it is esteemed the vilest and meanest of earthly things." I really wonder, what could this mean? Is it a poetical significance? They put a lot of mystery into what the Philosopher's Stone actually is. Anywho. Okay. Oh yeah. Another sidetrack. About Bernard of Treves. He was crazy, okay? He was a crazy medieval alchemist obsessed with trying to find the Philosopher's Stone. Everyone was obsessed with trying to find the Philosopher's Stone, but Al-Razi, which is an old Arab alchemist, wrote in his Secret of Secrets that he did find a way to create gold out of finding the Philosopher's Stone. And so he said that he warned all of the other alchemists to not try to recreate it because it will make society corrupt and greedy and all of these things that are just morally bad. But there was also no proof that he actually did make it. So it was just kind of this huge rumor that Bernard of Treves, young boy he started, he was probably around 14 years old in the medieval times. And he was also a very wealthy person, and he gathered a huge team of people in order to find a way to create the Philosopher's Stone. And he worked on this for almost the rest of his life. So 800 crowns later, he tried to make a crown of gold out of a crown of lead. So after 800 crowns of trying to create the gold. He wrote this in his journal. He's kind of like a sad, mopey guy. I feel really sad for him. "Many infinite regiments of sophistications to which I stuck for 12 years, having attained 38 years of age, still insisting upon the extractions of the mercuries from herbs and animals. Thus had I uselessly dilapidated, as well by my own folly, as by the seduction of impostors, about 6,000 crowns, so that I became almost despondent. But nevertheless, in my prayers, I never forgot to beseech God that he would deign to assist my endeavors." Was he successful? Should he keep trying? After 2,800 crowns, he kept going. He actually kept going. More than 10,000 crowns later, he finally gave up at the age of 58. So yeah, this just goes to show that even though you try and you try and you try, you may not succeed in what you actually want to create, but you do end up learning more things about yourself, right? Especially, come on, after 30 or so years. And I feel like he also probably mastered the laboratory techniques of actually trying to create certain things. If not gold, then maybe he was doing something. Maybe he was improving the method of distillation, or at least the pre of distillation. Yeah, so, anywho. Okay, so, now that we know a bit more about the use of the Philosopher's Stone in alchemy, let's explore how alchemy helped shape modern chemistry in the Western world today. The quest of discovering the Philosopher's Stone led to the decline of alchemy as a whole and a new beginning of chemistry in the Western world. Yes, it definitely did create history. I'm going to first talk about how it was the elixir of life before jumping into the future. okay? So the ancient Chinese and ancient Indians were actually much more interested about this. So let us examine the cultural significance. According to History.com on September 25th, 2015, the Philosopher's Stone was the most sought-after artifact, which could turn any ordinary metal into gold, while also acting as an elixir of life that could cure illness, renew the properties of youth, and even grant immortality to those who possessed it. Like what Voldemort wanted. But that didn't go so well for him, right? Anywho, on June 20th, 2017, the Huffington Post explains that the Philosopher's Stone comes in different forms, but usually tends to be considered consumable. So recipes to create the Philosopher's Stone usually contain the ingredients mercury, sulfur, iron, copper, and honey, which sounds delicious, because honey is sweet. It does not. Please don't do that. Don't try to eat metal, guys. Anywho, ancient alchemists were often fascinated by the spiritual quality of the Philosopher's Stone. Dr. Dagmar Wujastik, a professor at the University of Vienna and expert in the history of classical medicines, tells the Huffington Post that even though mercury is poisonous, the ancient Chinese and Indians believed it was about attaining a state of spiritual liberation or enlightenment without having to die through the outer layers of gross matter having been shed. So what this basically means is that people are eating this mixture of metals and honey, and their body is literally shedding, which does sound very unhealthy, but enlightenment? Maybe. Anywho. So now that we know more about the Philosopher's Stone and alchemy, let's talk about the modern chemistry. So, the quest of discovering the Philosopher's Stone led to the decline of alchemy as a whole and a new beginning of chemistry. Lawrence Principe describes in Chemistry World on June 21st, 2013, that Robert Boyle, also known as the father of modern chemistry, claimed to have seen the transmutation into gold himself. Another one of those alchemists who thought that they have seen the transformation. So he sought out to discover the method for 40 whole years. Also similar to the crazy dude Bernard of Treves, as we learned. But via adjusting the variables of metals, Boyle tried to make the natural world more effective by meddling with materials in the laboratory and developing laboratory techniques and monitoring processes in precision, which led into chemistry. Even though modern alchemical practices no longer exist and have transitioned into modern chemical practices, there are scientists to this day who still try to decipher ancient alchemical codes that are recipes for various acclaimed phenomena. The Telegraph reports in 2009 that the Mount Grace staff at a 14th century priory in Yorkshire, England, tried to replicate an old chartreuse liquor that's said to have miraculous medicinal properties, which may be similar to the elixir of life itself. So they attempted to have an herb garden to match the ingredients for this particular elixir of life. It was an attempt to give homage to the Carthusian monks who used to brew this recipe. This is also something else that they have done in this modern day. They actually found a recipe that seems to grow a tree of gold, and it kind of actually works, but it's still not necessarily gold that's being produced, but it does create a growing sort of shiny goldish metal. So maybe it was gold. Anyway. Okay, so today I went over the history of alchemy, why the Philosopher's Stone was so important to the ancient alchemists, and how this proto-scientific artifact paved the way to modern chemistry. History.com explains that in 1382, the legendary bookseller Nicholas Flamel claimed he had decoded an ancient book of alchemy in order to successfully test the recipe of transforming lead into gold. Whether this is true or not, it definitely sparked the evolution of scientific culture in our own world of muggles. Lastly, a lot of the cool information, especially about Bernard of Treves, is from this awesome book that I picked up from the library called The Last Sorcerers. If you're interested more about the heritage of chemistry, the ending of magic, and the beginning of science, this is a really nice book to pick up. It's called The Last Sorcerers, The Path from Alchemy to the Periodic Table by Richard Morris. Okay, and that's it.